Okay, and we're off and running. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to move over to the home screen. Like I said, what we're going to focus on today is the actual ASAP integration pieces. And we'll be covering the actual absence management menu options. Mary's going to go into those in detail. But before she does, I'm going to talk about how to integrate and also the actual integration configuration options underneath the system configuration menu. So I'm going to go to our PowerPoint here. Okay. And so, like I said, the first thing I want to talk about is the actual how to integrate. Pull up my chat again here. Here we go. And so with this, the first, I think the first thing that districts have to think about if they are wanting to integrate absence management with ESS is determining how they would like to integrate. Do they want everything to flow from frontline, or do they want to do like a hybrid situation, or they're not going to be using frontline at all? So it's just up to the district what will be best for them. So basically, the first no-brainer one is no integration at all, right? So they're only using ESS for subtracking and to create and go through the approval workflow on their absences. So it's something that obviously they don't have the configuration set up for integrating with ASAP. And so everything is solely being done in ESS. Workflows are being created in ESS. The sub coordinator, if they actually want to track, obviously there isn't any type of sub calling feature in ESS, but if they want to track them, they can by going in and marking when the employee goes in to create their leave request, they want to mark that they need a sub. The sub coordinator then gets that information in the sub coordinator grid showing those leave requests that are requesting a sub. And then they can go into those leave requests, modify them, enter in the sub information, and mark it that the sub's been scheduled. So all of this is strictly ESS only. There's no integration with ASAP whatsoever. So if a district decides that they just want to use ESS, we do have this information, even more details about this provided in the wiki, and I want to show you where that's at. So I'm going to bump that back over to that real quick and show you. So in our wiki, and I'm going to go to our wiki page here. And underneath the frontline absence management chapter, the first section is determining integration setup. And so the one that I just talked about is just using ESS only. And that's this first section right here. Now, the next section we're going to go into is using ASAP solely to integrate. So I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint here. And so for this one, no ESS workflows are needed. They are solely using Frontline for their subcalling, for their subtracking, for their workflow approval process for their absences. It's all done in Frontline. And so what happens then is that those absences are then pulled into ESS and they'll be displayed as leave requests. And the leave request form will indicate that it's been pulled from ASAP. So, and I'll show you that in a little bit on where that information's at. We also have the data import views that Mary's going to talk about here a little bit later that records the pull that's pulling in that information into ESS. So I want to get into this one a little more detail here. And so I want to show you an example. So I'm going to jump back to my instance here. And I'm just going to go in and look at a particular leave request so you can see what I'm talking about here. And so I'm going to pick on Brent Hurst. And I'll show his February 4th one here. I'm just going to view his timesheet or his leave request. And you'll see here that it shows that it came from ASAP. It's got the ASAP origin, basically explains this absence came from ASAP. The ASAP absence instant ID, we believe that this is an internal number. I probably want to get a little more clarification from the developers on this one, but it looks like it's like a unique identifier that's assigned to each absence. And it may help to track specific things, probably more in the back end, or things that we may need to look into for a reason if this didn't come over correctly or whatever. But it's more of just an internal number. And then the ASAP configuration number, if you were to view the absence in ASAP, there is a number assigned to that absence. That same number is the confirmation number in here. So if I were to go to look up this absence in ASAP, it would provide this number. It will display this number at the top of it. So that is a number, that is the absence coming over into ESS. And we'll talk about this here a little bit later when we get into the data import views and also when we talk about troubleshooting. So it's listed in several different places in the application. Okay, so I just kind of wanted to show you what the leave request looks like that's come over. Everything else looks pretty much, like it does if you would have created the leave request in ESS. But these basically denote that they came from ASAP. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my slideshow here. And I'm still talking about the actual integration that's just solely frontline based. So what it does when it gets pulled in is it goes into this, like we have this matrix table. It's out there in the documentation. And I kind of want to explain what it does when it pulls in. And it depends on if ASAP is set up for that absence to go through a work approval flow. I don't know absence management well, but I do know that they do have the ability to, like for some people, it's set up not to be through an approval process, and for others they can. So if this absence doesn't go through an approval process on the ASAP side, when it gets pulled over, so ASAP approval required, no. So when it gets pulled into ESS, that unapproved status that it is reflected in ASAP is going to get pulled over as approved in ESS. So when you look at that leave request in ESS, the ESS leave request status is going to show approved. So it's not going to be initiated or anything like that. And it's because this particular absence in ASAP did not go through a workflow approval process. So if the approval actually, if the absence has to go through a workflow approval process in ASAP, then it's going to go through a series of approval process steps. So obviously, if it does require an approval process, then all these are marked as yes. When it initially gets submitted, so they create the leave, the absence in ASAP, the sub gets called, and then it gets pulled in, like that 15-minute mark, you got pulled in, and it hasn't been approved yet. It'll show as an unapproved status in ASAP, but in ESS, it will be reflected with an initiated status. So then when it starts going through the approval process on the ASAP side, so the first approver approves it in ASAP, but they're not the last one. They're not the final one. They have a couple more people that need to approve that absence. It's going to get updated. So obviously ASAP is going to show it as partially approved. And in ESS, when that next pull comes in after it's been approved, it's not going to update the ESS status if it isn't the final approval. So it's going to continue to reflect an initiated status. And so once it gets through and the final approver approves it on the ASAP side, then it will go in and once again, it pulls in, every 15 minutes, maybe it's been a couple hours and then somebody finally approves it and it gets pulled in then the status is going to show obviously approved in ESS. So it changes from initiated to approved. If for some reason the absence is rejected or canceled on the ASAP side, it will pull in the updated status. Then once it pulls that in, that 15-minute interval, it will pull that and update the status of that leave request to canceled. So hopefully this matrix table kind of explains that in a little more detail. I know that some people will, kind of look at the data import view and look at that when that absence was pulled in, and it'll show down at the bottom of that screen that, well, it shows that it's unapproved. That's not the ESS status. That is the ASAP status. So those are just, that kind of gets confusing, but Mary goes into the absence management menu options and goes into like the data import views and all of that. She'll explain, what each of those is doing and better able to understand how those flow in. Okay. And I'll just kind of show you too. I keep talking about the data import views. Let me show you where that's at. So, and if I go down to the absence management menu option, here is the data import views. So here's where Mary's going to go into these to kind of show you how these get pulled in. These are just basically recordings of the imports that are getting pulled in, whether it's the absence was created in ASAP, it was updated in ASAP, canceled, the log files. So she'll get into all of those details in a little bit. Go back to my slide. And I'm going to go back to the previous one here. So the frontline integration, like I said, it's all in ASAP. There's nothing that is done. There are no workflows set up in ESS. So when those get pulled in, statuses get updated, and they all get to an approved status, the district can then go into ESS and export those approved ASAP generated absences that are now leave requests in ESS. They're able to go in and export those if they, in order to post them into USPS. So, that part can be handled on the ESS side. So another thing, another option on how to integrate is using a hybrid situation where you may have staff who need subs using absence management to create their absences and go through the approval process. And then for those that do not need subs, the district can have those users create their leave requests in ESS and go through a workflow approval in ESS. So with that being said, workflow setup needs to be created in both applications. So, so if they are using ESS to create their leave requests, they should not be using ASAP to create their leave request and vice versa because of the workflow. If they, are using ASAP to create their leave requests because they need a sub, then they have to use ASAP. They can't go into ESS and create it. There is no workflow for them in there. So, so that's just one thing to keep in mind, is that they have to be pretty vigilant about that. That teachers, if they're going to be using ASAP, they have to use ASAP to go through. And then for others that don't require a sub, then they're going to use ESS to create their leave requests. And all of this then, like I said, is detailed in that chapter. We also have it in the ESS guidelines. I think if I go back into the documentation here, show you where that's at. So again, like I said, it's detailed here about the 3 different options. And that's where that matrix table is listed as well. So these are the 3. And also we have an ESS guidelines, conversion guideline down here. And there is an ESS absence management integration area. And again, it goes in, and the very first thing it asks it, or list here, is if you want to determine how to integrate, click here, and it'll take them to that area in the wiki that will explain that in more detail. So those are the 3 main. You either don't integrate, you integrate solely with ASAP, or you have a hybrid situation where some will use ASAP and some will use ESS to create their absences. Okay, any questions regarding how to integrate? Okay, I'm going to move on then to the actual integration steps. So while I'm in this conversion guideline here, the next thing that it talks about in this bullet is for those that do want to integrate, that they need to contact Frontline. There's an email address here asking them for the templates that they need. So there are a bunch of templates that need to be added into the absence management configuration menu. And those all come from Frontline. We do not generate those. So this kind of gives them a little guideline on what they need to do. And then also for those ESS users that are going to integrate, there is an option underneath their user account that says sync to ASAP. And this is solely for their ESS leave balances to be synced, not absence data, just leave balances. So you'll want to go in and make sure that that sync to ASAP flag is marked to true. And so I think the easiest way to do that is to export those out of the user grid, update the spreadsheet to mark those as true, and then use mass load to load that back in. Underneath here, the next bullet, we talk about the actual configuration. So that's what I'm going to take you into next, is how do I go ahead and how do I turn on that, or get that green light to go in and actually integrate with ASAP. And so I'm going to take you to that part next. So we do have an actual absence management district configuration option underneath the system configuration menu. And they're really, the way you look at that menu option and the options available in it, there are really like 3 settings in there. And so I want to take you into those and how each of those behave. So we're going to go into the instance and I'll show those to you. All right, so I need to go down to system configuration, and I'm going into the absence management district configuration. So here are the 3 sections: enabling it, leave balance sync, and absence sync. So those are the three areas. So the first one there is basically once you check mark this, it will start the integration with ASAP. So you can set all the rest of this information up ahead of time, but when you are ready, you want the green light, and you want to start integrating, you're going to have to click and check mark this to actually start the integration. So you'll see here, and it might be a little hard to see, maybe I need to expand this a little bit. There we go. You will see that all these fields that have like a little bullet next to it, those are required fields. And so obviously the API key, that's coming from Frontline. All of the template ID information down here comes from Frontline. So that email that you generate to them requesting integration, they will send all of these template numbers back to you. So those will all, or to the district. And then you'll be entering in those template IDs in here. So you've got two different ways here that you can integrate. You can, if the district doesn't want to pull absences from ASAP, they just want to push leave balances to ASAP. You can check this flag here and make sure that this one isn't checked. So if this isn't checked and only these two are, then what that means is it will push leave balances to ASAP, and that's all it's going to do. There will be no pulling of absence information into ESS. So with the leave balance push, there is a schedule here. So by default, it's going to push those balances weekly. And I believe it's going to, I think this is the default setting, is that it will do that on Friday nights at 7 o'clock. So if the district wants to change that to another time, another day, I think the other period is biweekly, they can do that. And it will push those leave balances, not leave data, not absence data, just the leave balances to ASAP. I think we have a feedback issue. We do have a feedback issue. I know a couple people have asked if this could be synced more frequently than weekly or biweekly. I think we have an issue for daily here. Feedback issue 194. So if you get requests from your districts that they do want this to sync more frequently, please create a ticket and we can increase the times requested on that feedback issue. So if with this as well, with the push, I also want to explain where else in the application you're going to see this job happening, because this would be a scheduled job. And so I kind of want to show you where that's located. So I'm going to close out of here for a minute. We'll go back in a little bit. And I want to go down to System Batch Jobs. So another thing that you can search then to see when that syncs every week is you can go in here and find those batch jobs. And so the actual, anything that's ASAP related, I believe the job name starts with the word sync. So there's going to be sync leave balances, and there's also going to be one for syncing absence information, but we'll get to that in a little bit. So this is the actual job then that is going to push the leave balances to ASAP. And you'll see here, just, ours is set up that it's going to do this every Friday. Boom, there we go. It's happening every Friday at 7 o'clock. And so I'm going to pull this over here a little bit. And yeah, not a whole lot of information here. You can go actually in to view the details about the scheduled job. But this, indicates that it has completed and it's completed successfully. So, so that's one place to see, to confirm. Another place where you'll see that these batch jobs are being done is through the application log. So again, if I go into the message and just type in sync again, I'm gonna move my over here. And I'm going to, and this is an informational type of message. And when I look, the last sync was done on Friday, April 11th. And what I'm looking at, and like I said, we have it scheduled for 7 o'clock. So what I'm looking for here is actually what all took place. And so if I start with this very first one at 7 o'clock here, see here. I've got, here is the 11th. So this is the first one. The first thing it's basically saying, let me move this over so you can read more of that, is that it launched the sync leave balances job. So, and it started at 7 o'clock. Here it's executing the sync leave balances step. And then it finished executing it within 1 minute and 15 seconds. And then the last one here is just showing that it completed that sync at 7:01 and 15 seconds. So it really, there's like 4 kind of lines involved in the app log when it comes to that sync job, just basically telling you it launched it, executing it, executed, and it completed. So just kind of like just an FYI of some of that. So if there are any type of errors related to that, where it's not getting pushed correctly, then that's something you can create a ticket to us and we can look into that further. But yeah, this is kind of just showing, just a confirmation to you or the district to say, this is where I need to look and make sure that the batch job's running correctly and that it's looking good on the app log. Okay, I'm going to go back to the configuration again, into, and the next thing I'm going to talk about is the actual pull. So we just went through the push, but the pull is pulling the absence data. So this is the 15-minute pull that we set up, that it cycles through and looks for newly created absences, updated absences, canceled absences. And so obviously, again, this needs to be checked in order for that to happen. And so let's go in and kind of take a look and see what all happens with that. So I'm going to go close out of here, go back into the batch job. And so when looking for the actual absences, again, they all start ASAP related, start with the word sync. And then here is the sync absences job. And I'm going to resort this so that it's most recent. And these should be running every 15 minutes. And it looks like it is here. We've got 9:30 was the last one. It synced before 9:15 and so on. So again, if I want to see more details about it, I can click on this. But this is showing you, the actual sync process, the job that's taking place and that it completed. Again, I can go to the app log and do the same thing here. And I'm going to do sync absences. And what it's going to do is it's going to go out there and start filtering in on all of this and record the actual sync that took place. So the last one that was done was at 9:30. So I'm going to go all the way down to the 9:30 time frame here. This is the first row that shows something about it. And it does say, I'm going to move this over so we can read it better again. So 9:30. And it says that the sync absences job was launched. And then it's telling me what it's doing on that sync. So what it's first doing is executing the step to sync the absence create. Now, if we went into the data import view, there are several tabs up at the top where absence created tab absence update tab, absence cancel, cancel tab. There's several different tabs. And this is what it's doing. The application log is pulling and updating the information for all of those different tabs. So here's the absence create, and it did execute that. And then the absence cancel tab, and that was executed. The absence update data, and then the actual absence update log, that's this one here. There's a subassigned tab up on the data import view, that's this one right here, and then the sub removed. So it's going in and creating a log of each of those when it syncs every 15 minutes and what it updates. And those are the ones that Mary's going to talk about a little bit later. But you can see exactly it's going in and it's all informational. There are no errors. So that again indicates to me that the syncing, the pulling in of the absence information from ASAP is working correctly. And then at the very top is just a summary saying that this whole sync absences job was completed. So again, this will run again at 9:45, and we're going to see the same log information posted in here. So just kind of helpful information, especially for the ITC, just to ensure that the syncing is working correctly. Any questions on the batch job or the application job regarding, syncing absences, or any questions on the actual configuration option? Okay. I think I have everything that I was going to talk about up to this point. I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint. And I think Mary's next, and she is going to go into the absence management menu. I'll go ahead and stop sharing, Mary.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to set up my share. Okay. All right. Oops. So the first part that I'm going to talk about are going to be these three different jobs, the menu options underneath the absence management menu options. The first one is going to be data sync view, which will talk about the syncing of the absence reasons, the schools, and the employees. The school one is very popular. A lot of people have had to run into that one. Then we're going to talk about the actual synced absence management data, which will look at the errors or not errors, either one. We're going to talk about the absence reasons there, the school and the employee tabs. And then the data import view. The data import view is a little more involved. So what I'll do is start with the data sync view, because that's the first thing you're going to have to do. Once you get everything set up, then you would sync the absences, the schools, and the employees. One thing I do want to say is that every so often the district should go in and resync these. If it's been a while, they should go in and just kind of reset everything and make sure everything is syncing properly. I'm going to go ahead and go in here. To get to this screen, you would go to Absence Management and then Data Sync View, which is the second option underneath that. And all this entails is that you would just click on Absence Reasons Sync or School Sync, and it doesn't take very long for it to run. But I am using our development area. So those would be the three that you would sync. And that's all that this section entails. And the next section is the synced absence management. So this will tell you after the sync. So if I synced absence reasons, it tells you what actually matched and what didn't match between ESS and ASOP. So the absence reasons will sync the reasons between the two, the leave type reasons, and they should match between ESS and USPS, first of all, and then this sync matches between ASOP and ESS so that they're all three synced together. The school sync will pull all the schools from ASOP and store the records inside of ESS. So whatever is in ASOP gets pulled into ESS, and those need to match by IRN number between USPS and ESS. So I'm going to go into a little more detail here about the, I'm sorry, I forgot to talk about the employee one for a second. This sync, the employee sync, will sync employees between ASOP and ESS based on the employee ID or employee number. And that's the only criteria that's used to sync the two. And they must match, and that does mean that they need to match on case sensitivity as well. So let's go a little bit deeper into the absence reason sync. So this one you would see, you can see that on this grid, the check mark here is saying is matched between these two. That means that the VA vacation type is matched between ASOP and ESS. This is the absence reasons database key. And you can also see that there's others here that are not matched, and these are like subcategories that we have for family sick, the sick category, and family illness, personal illness. Those are active in ASOP, but they're not active on ESS. So if someone's to put in a leave request for sick family illness, it would not come through. It would create an error on the absence create screen, and it will tell you that on the screen. To see a good one, you would look at something like this down here, the personal family emergency. Both of those are active in, it's active in ASOP, and then it's also matched to one in ESS. This means that I had gone in and created a subcategory for personal leave. This is the leave type, and then this is the subcategory. And you can see here it creates an absence reason database key as well. So all of these are unique to the leave type or subcategory type. I'm not sure if I put, excuse me. Let me check my notes real quick, make sure I told you everything. The category or the leave type categories must match what is in USPS. I'm not sure if I said that to you already, but for example, a personal leave needs to say PL in ASOP as well. Sick leave needs to be in SI, and vacation VA, so make sure those match. I think that's it on those. Okay, so we will move on to the next item, which is the spot where you would add a subcategory, and that is done through leave management. So a leave manager would need to do this, or an admin, and you go to subcategories. Also, this screen does have the option to include or exclude items. And you would simply go in and create, and I did that with this one up here. The subcategory would be 1A. Personal family emergency is the description, and then you would create it based on which leave type it is. The leave types, let's see if I are in a selection box when you create it, and you can pick one of the ones that you have already assigned inside of ESS. You can go ahead and create all these and not set them active. You can do that later if you need to. And then you can also indicate whether you want them to have a reason required or not. Okay. Now we're going to go into, are there any questions on leave types before I move into the schools? Okay. If we go look at the school table here, again, you can include or exclude any of the items on the table. When a school is created inside of ASAP, you must have a corresponding building IRN and building code number attached to it for the leave to come into ESS. If it doesn't match with the IRN number that's in USPS, or if it's missing any of the information, it will show that it is not matched with the red X. The building IRN is then matched on between the position from ASAP and the position in ESS to the information in USPS. So if that building IRN doesn't exist, the leave won't come in. The position is, you could have one building on position A and then a different building in position B, but they both need to have building IRN numbers that match what's in the building code in USPS. That was a cause of quite a few issues at the beginning when we first started up ASAP with the integration, because a lot of districts did not have IRN numbers attached to their building codes in USPS. That has been fixed for 99% of the districts, and everything is running smoothly with them. We're not seeing as many errors at all with that. But that's why every so often, if you go back in and sync the absence school and employee, when there's a change, you can do it manually. You will have to do it manually, actually, because it doesn't have an automatic sync for that. Then everything will run smoother because the data will match. Okay. Let me make sure I told you everything here on the building codes or the school codes. So the one item that comes up every so often is that there's an external ID on the ASAP building code that is equal to the IRN number on the building code in USPS. There's also sometimes when a employee will need to have all of their leave attached to one of the building codes in ESS, where it doesn't matter what position they have in ASAP, but you want all the leave attached to a certain building code in ESS. If that's the case, then you can use the external employee ID number, and it will sync to that building. All the time for every leave request that comes in. Okay, I'm going to go here to employee. Any questions on the building matches? Okay. So the next one we'll talk about on the grid is the employee match. When they create an employee in ASAP, the employee ID number must match the employee number in ESS. And it is case sensitive. So if somebody types in a lowercase for the letters and it's still the same number, it was causing an issue. So they need to make sure that those do match correctly. The only item that creates the match is the employee ID number, so they don't have to worry about the email or the phone number or anything like that. So I'm just gonna do take a look at this one. So Brent here is a match, and you can see that he is matched here, but the email address between ESS and ASAP doesn't match. And the same thing with the phone number, they don't match. This report on this grid is still helpful because you may want them to match, so the district can go in and fix one side or the other so that they do match. And also the phone numbers. They don't have to, it will still match the person. And if you need to look at more details, you can click on the eyeball here to see the employee and the positions that they are matching with. So if I look here, I can see that that's a teacher position for him. And if I look at this one, the secretary and driver position match with that building IRN. So that's also a helpful thing to look at, especially when the errors come back saying that there's no building match. You can come in here and take a look and see why maybe the position is in ASAP, but not in ESS or USPS. Then you'll know what to go in and fix. That is the end of matching the data between the two systems. Are there any questions about that? Okay, so the next thing we're going to talk about is the data import view, and Michelle already brought some of this up. This is the grids where you can see what is coming in from ASAP, and it's data that is sent from ASAP to ESS. Very cryptic, but our developers made it look really nice on the screen. So I have linked all the documentation to these, so they're all hyperlinked, and you can just click on them, go take a look for more detail if you need it. We'll talk about absence create grid, the absence canceled, absence update data, updated log, sub assigned, and sub removed. So on the absence create, we pull the leave request details every 15 minutes. So any newly created leave will be logged under that area for every 15 minutes. If it's successful, it will also be displayed under the leave request area for the user. And they can see it on the calendar. So for a normal user to be under my leave requests, and it will, if you go into the eyeball icon, you can see that it was an ASAP origin. It will give information on that screen about the instance ID and the confirmation number. The leave request approval trail will not necessarily have anything in it when it comes from ASAP, because it's not going to run through our ESS workflows. It runs through the ASAP workflows. So that's another indicator of if a leave came in from ASAP, it will not show anything on the leave request approval trail. When a leave is a multi-day leave coming in from ASAP, it will be pulled in and recorded as individual leave requests. Okay, and then the employee external ID1, it's as I indicated a little bit earlier, if they want the employee to have the same position number for all of their absence, regardless of what they put in ASAP, they can put that ID, that indicator on that field, external employee external ID1. There's also a split from ASAP. If, for example, someone puts in a leave for a whole day, but then the sub is only available half a day, so they will split that leave into 2 half days, and 2 different subs will come in on it. That will be updated as well inside of the system. So when it'll come in as 2 different confirmation numbers, even though it's on the same day. Oh, sorry. Got click happy there. The absence reason external ID is used for sick, doc, those kinds of things. And that'll show you what was entered in on the ASAP side. And then there's a processed message. The process message on that screen will tell you if there was an error, and what the potential error could be. And if it is blank, that means it's a good leave request. It came in with no problems and we don't have any issues. So it comes in cleanly. If there is something that needs to be fixed, you can resync on those the sync area, and then the leave should come in on the next pull with the next 15-minute pull that comes up. So let me go in and show you on the date. This is what a sample screen of the absence create is. Sorry, wrong area. Okay. So we're going to go into this data import view option. And these are the 6 tabs at the top. This is the absence create. And you'll see every 15 minutes, if there's a leave that's created, it will come in. I'm going to look at, whoops. This is my favorite person. So on this one, you could see like on the, by the way, there's a bunch of other stuff on the screen that you can add or remove. So the school external ID was 091 for most of these, but this one was 700. The confirmation number is in this column. The reason that they are taking the leave and the date. And if the process message is blank here, that means it's a good leave. It came across fine. This one here looks like it had a problem. So I can go in here and view that. And it gives me a whole lot of information here. The organization ID, of course, and then the school external ID is 091. Gives you the database key of the school. Created date, process date, and then the error. This one is telling me that there are no eligible positions found that are a vacation type. So what I had done was I put a vacation request in on the ASAP side, and it comes through, but it says, hey, this position that you have at this building doesn't allow you to have a vacation day. So it errors out and doesn't allow that vacation day to come in. This person was only allowed to take sick or personal. So once I go back in and fix it, then it comes through appropriately. So I can go into ASAP, fix that as a sick day, and then it came through. It will also tell you if the leave needed a substitute, and if one has been assigned it, the name will be in here as well on the absence create. Now, if I go in and take a look at the column with the absence canceled, it will show me any absences that have been canceled, and there was one that was canceled on the 14th. And it's telling me, oh, I can't cancel it because it's been exported already. So I would have to go in and revert the export and then allow this to process in the 15-minute interval, and should be able to cancel it at that point. Other than that, it will tell you all the ones that were canceled by the staff at the staff within ASOP. Absence update data will give a log of everything that's been updated on the leave request. Sorry, I'm gonna catch my slides up here real quick. Okay. When the 15-minute intervals, every 15 minutes, it will create a record here for anything that has been updated within that 15 minutes for a leave request that's already in here. It will also display any changes on the leave request on the ESS side. So it will update information like the if they changed the date, if they added a note, if they added the substitute, it will update what's on the ESS side as well. And in here, you can go in and see if there was any changes made. This one, I was testing for a building code match, so I just added a note, and that came through as a update on that leave request. If there was, I'm gonna go back in there a second. This one here, if there was a problem with an update, it will say, it will give you a processed error message as well. Okay. And the next item I have is the log. These three are basically logs. Of everything that happens for absence update. So every time there is a change, let's come in here. So if it's like this one, the process message says the absence had a final approval. So the log will go ahead and update the leave request if it's been totally approved. So if it began in the initiated status, then the update will come in and tell it that, yes, so it's been final approval, and that will update the leave on the ESS side as well. So if you have a problem with someone, you can look them up by their ID number. and you'll see everything for that person. And
Hey,
this,
Mary, there's a question in the chat.
okay,
Carol had asked, how can you tell what exactly was updated?
okay. From this processed message here, and then it tells you the log description as well. I hope I answered the question. Absence update data tab. Okay. This one is a little more difficult to read. I knew that I had changed this. So if you were coming in here and looking at it, you would have to compare the two unless Michelle knows a better way to do it. What is this?
I don't, I was hoping maybe you had.
Yeah, I just, in my mind, I knew that I had
I
changed that.
don't.
So that's what I looked at.
Carol, that's a good question.
It
I
is.
think what I do it too is I kind of look at the update data and I compare that to yeah, because it is a tough one to know, because when you go look at the leave request, it's been updated there as well. And
Right.
we don't have anything where it highlights, what was changed. I don't know, that's something we could maybe see if that's possible. To see,
Yeah.
maybe put it in yellow or something of the things that have been updated. I know that log helps maybe explain that a little bit better than the actual absence update data tab. So that could be an option as well, to look at the log instead, to see maybe if am I right on that, Mary, that the log file might have a little bit
Yeah.
more information about what got updated versus the actual absence update data tab.
Yep. I do like the idea of color coding or some kind of indicator on this if they can do it. I'm not sure because a lot of the data that comes in is kind of cryptic. That comes in from ASAP. So they have to put it in this nicer format for us. But we can ask. So in the update log, yeah, it makes it easier in here to see what's changed from the processed message that comes in and the log description. Thanks, Carol. All right. We'll go to subassigned. And this logs the time when the substitute was assigned to the leave request. So this is the log date and time. What happened was I assigned this person after I had created the request to make sure that the subassigned log would capture that. And then it goes back to the leave request and it will add it on to that leave request as well. And then this one is the sub removed log. If someone removes the sub after it's been assigned, it will give you the same type of message that the sub was removed. And this is the description of the log. And then it tells you also who did it. So that's a helpful screen as well. And that will update the leave request as well. Oops, I'm sorry, the substitutes, full name will be removed from the ESS leave request as well. Okay. So we talked about syncing and then what to look for as far as errors in these three tables. And then what is actually imported in on these 6 tables here. If you need to make a change in anything for a school building, for an absence reason, you want to make sure that you also go back in and sync. And then you can go back in and take a look at what's been imported after the 15-minute mark. But I would sync them, check the error again to see if it's matched or not. And then it should be good to go on the next 15-minute interval. And that is all I have, Michelle, for these tables. And by the way, these grids also work like the other ones. You can move these columns around. And you can select and deselect what you want to see. There's a lot more, like on the, let me go back up. I think it was this one. So a lot more information that you could include or exclude on here. So there's a lot of, like the absence start stop. I took that off so we'd have a little more room, but there is a lot of information on there that you can look at. Okay, Michelle, back to you on the troubleshooting tips now.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead and share my screen.
If my stop share would work. There we go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to wrap this up with a couple examples regarding how to look for some of these that Mary just went over. And so what we've done, go back to my notes here so I don't miss anything. So most of the issues that we've seen with ASAP have to do with either an absence is not reflecting the correct USPS position when the absence is pulled into ESS, or the absence isn't pulling into ESS. And it could be on that issue 2 here, a mismatch on the absence reason, on the school building IRN, and on the employee, the things that Mary has covered. What we wanted to do is kind of take you through an example of each of these. And what we did is we created a troubleshooting document out there in the appendix. We did that last fall, and we were kind of waiting it out to see if we are consistently seeing the same type of issues or if they're all over the place. And thankfully, it's been, for the most part, the same type of issues, which are the ones that I have listed on this slide here. So we updated the troubleshooting document this week, actually. So you guys are the first ones to see it. We kind of went in and categorized these to make it a little bit easier to understand, since these seem to be the main pain points. And so we're going to just go through an example of each of these and wrap up today's session with that. Go ahead and put my chat on here. And with that, I will show you the troubleshooting document, and then we'll go through each of these examples. What I did is I created, if you scroll through the slideshow, I created like a screenshot of each of these that basically details what is showing in that troubleshooting guidelines, but more in a visual. I'm a visual person, so this makes, it kind of cements, what you're seeing in the guidelines document. And if you guys feel that these pictures on here are very helpful and should be included in the troubleshooting guidelines, we will do that. But I kind of wanted to see if you guys feel like these are helpful before we actually go in. So before we get into each of these, I want to go into the actual troubleshooting guidelines to kind of show you where that's located. So let me go back to. So in our appendix, we have a troubleshooting absence management integration. And so what you're seeing up here in the table of contents was basically on that slide. And so, like I said, these were the main pain points that we've been experiencing. Mary touched upon a couple other different ones. I might add those onto here when she was covering the data imports and the error processed error messages. But these are some of the other ones that we've seen often. And so, like I said, this first issue is when the actual absence gets pulled into ASAP, but it's not reflecting the correct USPS position. And so what I've done basically is I took this explanation for this whole thing in here and put it in a slide. So I'm going to go back to that slide and I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so that you guys can see this better. Zoom in a little bit better here. That helps a little bit, I hope. Excuse me. And so when this happens, and the person contacts you and says, hey, their leave request pulled in ASAP, but it's showing on their custodial or their bus driver position when it should be showing on their custodial position. And why did that happen? And so there is a chain of events that takes place here. And I kind of want to go through each of these and show you screenshots of where it's coming from. So when ESS pulls in the absence, what it's first going to look at is the employee external ID field on the employee record in ASAP. And Mary touched upon that earlier. So here is the ASAP record. Let's see if I can just zoom in a little bit more here. So this screenshot right here is the ASAP record. And so it's not the full record, it's Brent's employee record in ASAP underneath the general tab. And I had to kind of cut it short a little bit here, but here is his employer or his USPS ID, his employee ID. And then down here is this employee external ID. So it's first going to go and check to see if there is a position number in this employee external ID. And if there is, so if it's got one listed, so it'd be his position number 1 in USPS. If it has one listed in here, and that position is the secretary position, that kind of noted down here, then it will go in and that absence will be assigned to that secretary position. So if that though is a blank, then it goes through this next chain of events. So ESS will then look at the ASAP school building IRN assigned to the employee's absence and will apply the absence to the first active position with the lowest position number for that employee containing that building in ESS. Now let's just do the visual on that. So this is blank. So it's going to go to the actual absence. This is the ASAP absence. And when he created the absence, he assigned it to the Adams Elementary School building. And so when that happens, then it says that the chain of events, it's going to look at the first active position with the lowest position number for that building. So let's go into their positions in USPS. And those obviously USPS and ESS are talking, so it knows where it needs to look. And that position here is the first active position for that building and assigns it there. So that's what happened. It kind of stopped at that chain of event and knew that it needed to take that absence and assign it to the secretary position. And if I look at that leave request in ESS, it'll show it here. The position is secretary. And if I actually went in to actually view the leave request, it would say 1-secretary is the position. So if there were no active positions for the employee, for this one, it's resolved. We know that it assigned it to the secretary, but if there weren't any active positions for him, then it will look at the first inactive position with the lowest position number for that employee containing that building. So it would go to an inactive position for Adams Elementary and assign that. If it can't find that, then if there's no building IRN tied to that position in USPS, then ESS will apply the absence to the first active position with the lowest position number for that employee, period. There's no building, so it's just going to look for the lowest position number for that employee. And if there are no active positions, then we'll move to the first inactive position with the lowest position number for that employee in ESS. So the chances that it gets down to like this third and fourth bullet are slim, but we just wanted to explain how ESS looks at that when it assigns the position or assigns the absence to the position for the employee. Things that are removed for consideration when it is going through the chain of events is if the leave request is sick, vacation, or personal, but that position is not eligible for that type of leave, then that gets removed from consideration on the chain of events. Archived positions will be ignored. Job status of terminated or deceased will be ignored. So those are just kind of FYIs on what is being removed from consideration when it's going through these chain of events. So I hope that this one kind of explained the process here by seeing visually where it's taking place. I'm looking at, making sure that, in his ASAP employee record, he doesn't have an employee external ID, so it needs to start looking at the next step. And the next step is to actually look at the absence and see what building it was assigned to. And if that building is on there, then it's going to go move into the actual positions that are tied to that building for the employee. And it's going to look at the first active one for that, and it's going to assign it there. That's what it did. So hopefully this slide, basically, like I said, it explains that guideline documentation, but in a visual format here. So the next thing we're going to talk about is a mismatch on the absence reason. So let me go back. And so basically that first slide just kind of explained all of this. There are some extra questions here too. In case you have further questions, those things are addressed down here. So our other pretty popular question is it didn't pull in at all. So why didn't it pull in? And that's where Mary was focusing on that processed message. And so basically it's either an absence leave reason, a school building IRN issue, or a specific employee type of issue. And so to help narrow down those reasons, refer to the data import views absence create grid. And that's going to show you that process message error. So that's like kind of the first thing that you go to that Mary just showed you here a little bit ago. So here is where, you locate that process message in that grid and you look to see, okay, what happened with this particular absence as to why it didn't get pulled into ESS. So for this particular one, the message is that it couldn't find the building IRN. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through these three main errors. And the first one we're going to talk about is if they get a process message saying that the absence reason was not found. So I'm going to go back to my slides here and go and show that one to you. So here is the mismatch on the absence reasons. Let me just move this up a little bit. Here we go. And so again, I'm in the absence create grid and I'm seeing my process message saying that it couldn't pull in this because the absence reason was not found. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up this message. I'm going to click on the eyeball to look at this message, and I'm going to hone in on the absence reason database key. That is kind of like my ticket to find out exactly what's going on with this one. And what I'm going to do then is I'm going to look at that synced data view underneath our absence management view. And I'm going to look to see what isn't matched for that absence reason. And so it's 120172. So when I go and look up underneath the absence tab, and I even do a filter on that, I start filtering anyways. It shows all of those that start with 12017, and then 2 is right here. And it clearly tells me that it is active in ASOP. So this subcategory is an ASOP, but it's not finding the same subcategory in ESS. So where am I going to go to? I want to look at my subcategories in ESS to see, do I have this one? And when I go look up the subcategories, it's not there. So this needs to be added as a subcategory in ESS. And once it does, they can run the absence sync again. And what happens then is then this will change. It'll check mark this with the green check mark to say that it's matched. And then it will fill in the ESS related information in these 3 blank columns here so that they can clearly see that the subcategories now match between ASOP and ESS. So I kind of used like these little bullets here to say, look here, then go in and look at the actual absence record, look at the absence reason, find that absence reason underneath the absence reason data view, and then you confirm it isn't matching. So there's something wrong, and I wonder if there is a missing subcategory in ESS. I go into the subcategories and it's not there, so I need to add it. And if I go back to the documentation quick here, basically, this is what this explains. There's a mismatch, go into the data sync view afterwards and click the absence reason sync to manually sync them again. And then once it's synced, then those will be filled in on underneath the absence reason. So the next one I'm going to talk about is an example about a mismatch on the school building IRN. So again, I'm going to go back to my slide here. Go to the next one. And this is the mismatch on the school building IRN. Sure, I've got it all on here. Okay, great. And so again, I'm looking at the actual message, the processed error message underneath the absent create grid. And it's telling me that no eligible positions are found for this building. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look up that individual in USPS to see what's going on. And so their employee number is listed here. So I can filter underneath positions for that employee's number. And what I'm going to look at is it says that the following building IRN is not found. So I'm kind of looking at that going, yeah, I don't see a building IRN. And so to kind of confirm this, I'm also going to go into the synced data view, the school tab, and also confirm that it's basically showing me this the same thing, is that there is not a match right now between the school building that is in ASOP and the IRN and the school building IRN and ESS. So, and that kind of confirms this here. If I went and looked at the building codes in USPS as well, I'm in positions right now. But if I also go into the building codes as well, pretty much guaranteeing that Bloomfield Elementary will not have an IRN. That will be empty. So one thing I can do then is, they could go in and look at that particular building in ASOP. This is the ASOP screen here. And the external number that's listed in here is the building IRN. So 2923 is the building IRN. It is not listed in USPS. It's a missing. And so that again confirms that I need to go in and add that IRN in USPS. And once I add it in and sync, it will autofill the rest of this information. It'll change this to a green check mark, and then it will add the information here. And this is the ESS/USPS information right here, and that will get filled in. So that's probably a good way to kind of look at it. Look at the error. It's something with the building IRN right away. I think payroll. There's something missing. And you can look up the building codes or the actual position and look at the building codes, add those to the grid and confirm that, yeah, that's missing. You want to go and look at it in ASOP, or the district does, to confirm that they do have the IRN listed in there, then it's pretty much guaranteed that it needs to be added in USPS. So again, if I go back to my the same information in here, basically once I make an update in USPS, it's recommended that you sync the USPS data sync and sync positions underneath there. And then you also manually sync the school underneath the ESS data sync view. That's where Mary was saying earlier, it's always good to kind of do that regularly. But in a situation like this where there is an error and something isn't getting pulled in, you definitely have to run it at that time so that things sync up. And so, like I said, once that gets corrected, it will fill that in nicely, and that this will disappear and it will be check marked, and everything will look good. So that's another common one. The last one that I want to talk about is the mismatch on the employee. So again, if I go back to my screens here, my PowerPoint slides. So this is the mismatch on the employee example. So again, I'm in the data import view underneath the absence create, and this is the error that I'm receiving. This absence didn't come into ESS because the employee is not found. This one is a pretty simple one. So basically what I'm doing is I'm going again to look at that data tab view, the employee tab. This kind of coincides with what's going on here. And it does confirm, yes, I have apparently a mismatch on this particular person. There's no ESS username. Why is that blank? And then, these things aren't matched as well, which it's, and Mary had said this before, what it's looking at in order to match, it's looking at the employee ID. It's not really looking at this stuff. It's just making it known that maybe these things don't match between ESS and ASOP, but it's not a deal breaker. So these are things that can get cleaned up later. But the reason it is not even coming in is because, again, I can confirm that this employee is in ASOP. This is the ASOP screen. And it tells me their number here. So this is their employee ID number, their employee number. And if I go in then and look up, so that, kind of coincides with this right here. This is the number here, and it's showing that ASAP employee number here. Is this employee an ESS? So I'm going to go to users. I'm going to type in that employee number or their name. I usually try to go with the number. I could try a couple different filters, and it's blank. It can't find that employee. So that is my indication that this person was set up in ASAP, but an ESS user account was never created for them. So they need an ESS account. So that is something then that I would go in and create that user in ESS, sync the positions, and manually run that employee sync. And then once that's done, then this will update underneath the data view to say that it's now matched, and it will list the ESS username in here. So again, if I go back to my documentation here, so like I said, after the employee was added, I need to change that. After the employee is added, then you want to make sure that the syncing is done between ESS and USPS, and that the employee sync underneath the data sync view in ESS is done as well. So once that's all okay, that employee's officially been added to ESS, and those should match up. So we felt like these were kind of like we said, most of the tickets that we get have to do with one of these. If there are more that keep coming in that are kind of repetitive type of questions, we'll add these to this troubleshooting guideline. Obviously, we don't have all of them covered in here, but we feel like, I hope that helps explain, using those visual slides, how you guys can go in and troubleshoot some of these issues. The first thing you need to do is always go in and look at that and ensure that there is some type of error on the process message. That's like the number one thing you need to do, is go in, especially for this one, when they are not pulling in. Why? I need to go to the absence create, because I'm guaranteeing that there is some type of error telling me why it didn't pull in. And then I can go from there. Okay, any questions regarding these troubleshooting errors? I don't see anything in the chat. Do you guys feel that those slides would be helpful to add to the documentation? Because if so, we can add them. Yes, please. Gotcha. So yeah, we'll figure out a way to add those to that troubleshooting guideline so that you can see the visuals and how to attack this when you do get a question like this. All right. Well, do you have any other questions regarding ASAP integration? All right. If not, we're going to wrap things up for today. Tomorrow, we are going to be covering timesheets. So we'll be going in and doing an overview of that. And if you look through the slideshow, down at the bottom of this, we do have some future enhancements on timesheets. We still have some stuff, some work to do in timesheets. But I know some of you have questions regarding, does it do this? Does it do that? I would look at those future enhancements to see if maybe some of those tier issues that we have written up will answer some of your questions. But we'll go ahead and wrap things up for today, and we'll see you guys tomorrow. Thanks, everyone. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you, you too.